Hi everyone, Carmen Sandiego here with Rhyme Signatures, the nerdiest music review this side of where the hell have I been for the last 2.5 months. And today we're going to be doing a review of the new Porcupine Tree album, Closure, Continuation. Oh boy, it's here. It's actually real and not just the subject of intense internet scrutiny about its existence anymore. Hooray, it exists! Okay, excitement aside, let's take a look into things here. Porcupine Tree are kind of like, a bit like me, really. After having taken some much needed time off, done a bit of my own thing, a bit of soul searching recently, I decided it was high time I should dust off the old projects once again and return to this silly little YouTube channel. Like Mr. Steven Wilson himself, I'm back once again like a renegade master. So where do I even start with Porcupine Tree? To say that this band shaped me and what I enjoy musically would be a gross understatement. I practically lived and breathed this band all the way through university into my early days of full-time employment. And even now, some 20 plus years after I first started listening to them, records like Dead Wing, Stupid Dream and Lightbulb Sun still remain very much on my list of comfort records that I could listen to like 1,000 times and never get bored of. I guess in layman's terms though, if you wanted to break the band down brass tacks style for a new listener, you could kind of describe Porcupine Tree as a bit of a Radioheady, Pink Floydy, grungy kind of thing, with a lot of frontman Steven Wilson's own personality and eccentricities sprinkled throughout the mix just to keep it a bit more interesting and unique. Now, it has been an extremely long time since we've had the pleasure of a studio record bearing the name of Porcupine Tree. Back in 2009, The Incident was unleashed upon us, and it was fine. Not to say, of course, that it was a bad record, not by any stretch at all, but it was the follow-up to the frankly absurdly good Fear of a Blank Planet, which I would argumentatively call the band's magnum opus, although I do personally flip-flop between that and Dead Wing as my personal favourite. But that kind of honestly brings me to one of my favourite points about this band and their storied discography, is that there is arguably not a single bad record amongst the bunch, and a lot of that I feel can be attributed to the incredible versatility on offer throughout, from the experimental and atmospheric Voyage 34 to the angry, crunching adolescent metal of In Absentia, and the introspective and Pink Floydian The Sky Moves Sideways. Every single record in the discography has such an incredibly distinct personality that it manages to make it so that every fan will almost always have their own personal favourite record, and every single choice is completely justifiable. I mean, to parallel something, what Metallica fan would ever genuinely call Saint Anger or Lulu their best record? Like, it just doesn't happen. Porcupine Tree fans have an enviable position of being able to name pretty much any record and it will be plausible. Up the Downstairs? Sure. Lightbulb Sun? Cool. Signify? Legit. So, 13 years after the incident, we finally come to the intriguingly titled Closure/Continuation. And with such a legacy behind it, how does this hold up? I am extremely relieved to say that it's good. Great even in parts. Is it their best? Not for me. But there's a lot to love on offer here all the same. And much in the same fashion as everything that's come before it, there's still a great argument to be made for why it would be someone's favourite Porcupine Tree album. And honestly, what more could I ask for? So often we see bands returning from a long hiatus and honestly kind of wishing that they hadn't. And I was worried about this one as well, and not just because of how important this band has been to me over the years, but Steven Wilson's solo career, while starting incredibly strongly, has been dipping lately with the average to okay to the bone, and frankly giant pile of crap that was The Future Bites. Ew, didn't like that one at all. The Stevie factor seemed to be fading, and the big question for me was, has he lost the magic touch? It's hard to call it from this record though, as this is completely Porcupine Tree and not just the Steven Wilson show, and I'm delighted to report that Gavin Harrison and Richard Barbieri are just as prominent and important on the sound of this record as you would hope they would be. We're not going to address the absent elephant in the room of Colin Edwin though, as I'm sure if you want to know more, then a quick Google search could tell you far more about the absent bassist than I ever could. But Stevie handles the lower end duties pretty well on Closure Continuation. The sound of this record is tight, it's cohesive and fluid, and everything sounds so organic and natural. It's almost as if the boys have never spent any time away from each other over the last 13 years, despite all their various solo projects and endeavours. The songwriting and its structures, as well as the overall tone and aural feel, is definitely subscribing to the latter years of the band, with plentiful sprinkles of In Absentia, Deadwing and The Incident to be found, but there are trace elements of the Pink Floyd worship of the band's early years as well. I don't want to go into too deep a dive of this record, as honestly I could just analyse and pick apart the smallest minutiae and make this like a 40-minute long review, but nobody really wants to listen to that, and honestly I can't be bothered recording that. I will stress, however, though, that the deluxe version of the album is definitely the one to get your teeth into, as it does come with 3 additional songs at around 18 extra minutes or so of listening time, with honestly all of them being easily worthy of inclusion in the main track listing, and it kind of baffles me a little bit that they aren't normally on it. Like, what? Curious tracking decisions notwithstanding, though, there is a great deal of variety still on Closure Continuation, and as mentioned earlier, it really does run the full gamut of what Porcupine Tree have done over the years, whilst also dipping toes into the better parts of Wilson's solo work. This does mean, though, and this is probably the album's greatest detriment, is that it does lack as defined a personality as the rest of the band's discography. At times, kind of sounding like a series of tributes to honestly better songs from their career. Like Harridan sounds a bit like Luminol from Raven That Refused to Sing, Dignity sounds like something from Blackfield, Chimera's Wreck is channeling Arriving Somewhere But Not Here, and Rat's Return really does sound a bit like a B-side from In Absentia. This obviously isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially considering the fact that this album is coming a full 13 years after The Incident. You can't expect the band to reinvent the wheel again. Sometimes it's nice for a band to come back into your life, looking and sounding a bit like how you remembered them, as it helps you to recall why you loved the band so much in the first place, why Porcupine Tree affected you as much as they did 20 years ago. Kind of like meeting up with your best friend from school, who you've grown distant from over the years. Closure Continuation is a genuinely warm and loving reunion, but it does mostly make you nostalgic for what you used to get up to when you were so much younger. So what else can I say about Closure Continuation? It's absolutely what I was hoping for from a Porcupine Tree album in the year of our Lord, 2022 AD. It's familiar, but it's fresh, and the only thing really holding it back is a kind of a lack of distinctness and some really questionable lyrics. But you could argue that's just Steven Wilson in general. It remains, however, a very solid album that held my attention from start to finish, with very few genuinely dull or unsatisfying moments to be found. This is all, of course, my opinion, as you know, so tell me what you thought of this record in the comments down below. If you have anything you've listened to this year that you think I should check out, then let me know and I might get around to giving it my own thoughts, and hell, maybe I won't wait 2.5 months until I do another one of these. If you like this video, please do share it with anyone who you think might enjoy it. Please do consider subscribing for more content, because I promise you I will do more this time. Until next time, guys, keep your rhyme signatures odd.